Next step is to install the tail tube itself, the torque tube and the tail boom into the rear tail transmission. This component here, this is rear of the helicopter, front side of the helicopter. This is the bottom with the main gear. There's one loose hexagonal bolt here. This is going to make sense once we put it into the frame. The tail tube assembles with the notch on the left hand side of the airframe. It's going to come in. The notch slides forward. We're going to come back to the back side and make sure that the torque tube itself is fully seated. Now if I come back to the front, when I turn the torque tube, I can actually see the gears move here. Very simple. This is going to get put together. We're going to get a 3mm nylon lock nut on each of the left hand side here. 4 bolts in the back. Pretty straightforward. Get these to seat. Opposite side, we've got 2.5mm, 3mm by 10 bolts. Gonna snug these down. And last, before we forget, right here on the right hand side, I'm going to point this out, there's a hole through the plastic housing that goes into the torque tube itself. There's a 4mm bolt that actually threads in here, and this is to ensure that the tail boom does not back out of this housing even if we've got too much lubricant or it's not quite cinched down. This was done early in the T-Rex 700 Evolution. Okay. That just secures the bolt. That bolt threads in and ensures that the tail boom is not going to back out. The next step will be to assemble this into the frame. Okay, next step in the assembly is to insert the tail boom assembly with the transmission into the frame. We can spread the frame very slightly in the back. Tail boom's going to come in. It has to stay fairly low to get below all the wiring, so essentially it's going to slide right on top of the rudder servo. There, get that. Slide in, and what we're looking for is the rear to align approximately here. I can let this sit for just a moment. Now, the front 2 bolts on the lower side, get this to reline up again. If we rotate the frame on its side, we've got a bolt combination here that will make sense. Okay, if we look at this in order, the lower 2 bolts here are going to be 3mm by 10 standard bolts. Bolts that look like this. And the 3 bolts here, here, and here are going to be the socket head, the collar screws like this. I'm going to set this down for a moment. As always, remember to use thread lock on each of these bolts. These are subject to vibration and coming back out. So we're going to get a couple in place here. Okay, those are my 3 collared screws like that on this side. The other 2 are going to be my 3 by 10mm standard screws, and these come in through the lower frame reinforcement from the side. Look at this here. Okay, so what we've got is bolts, the collared larger head here, here, and here, and then your two lower frame bolts, and that's your frame attachment for your tail transmission. Other side of the airframe is going to be exactly the same thing. Your standard 3x10s here and here, then the collared bolts here, here, and here. And we'll be back when we start putting together the tail support braces.